All right, everybody, we'll get started here in just a minute. Um, so today's topic is your fiber plant area 51? All right. So in the Zoom webinar, there's some options there. I think to do QA and questions, or you can do chat. I guess the QA is usually the stuff, but either place is fine if you have questions. It's all good. Um, so I am this person down here in the bottom right corner, Jason. Um, and I do pre and post sales support and sort of help sales guy, talk about the product and answer technical questions and all that good stuff. So, and then on the other side of the spectrum, if you do purchase a product, I'm usually around to help with questions and installs and other things, along with other people as well. So not just myself. Um, and Fred, I don't think Fred's on the call today, which is fine, but he's in sales and sales at graphicalnetworks.com if you guys really want to see a fuller demo or have more questions and so on. So, get started. This isn't really a PowerPoint presentation outside of the ones I'm showing you here. I'm not even in slideshow mode because I have a tendency to mess that all up. So, I'll just share the screen here. Um, so the agenda overview, some polling questions. We'll talk about netTerrain, which is the product from Graphical Networks, and then there's questions and all that good stuff. I guess you get a DoorDash gift card for attending. We'll email you. We have to verify you're a real live human being and all that good stuff, um, and some other things. So you can expect that unless you don't meet that criteria. Um, so the reason I guess you'd probably be here today talking about fiber plant is you may not have information you need for fiber plant capacity or pathways or tracking things, understanding your fiber infrastructure a little more fully. You also might want to be sort of dedicated circuit pathways for your fiber, designing something or at least kind of showing how things might interconnect together, helping to manage infrastructure and so on. That's sort of the problems we sort of hear about. And solution fiber plant documentation software of some sort, whether it's our product, netTerrain, with outside plant, or another manufacturer. There's obviously different folks out there sort of serving this area. And it's all good. You should always look at multiple vendors. That's just, common when you're looking at software. Get a feel for different products, companies, etc. Go through the whole thing, not just features, functionality, but support and, answering your questions and, of course, pricing and all kinds of things to consider when you're doing that. But as far as fiber documentation, making, tracking changes, planning for capacity, circuit management, sort of talking about some of those things. So. Place in view, quickly search for OSP elements, manholes, towers, splices. Visualize your entire fiber plant using Google or OpenStreetMap and save hours of work on circuits, hopefully. That's sort of the plan. So I think there's a polling question in here. Let me see. I'll start this first one. Let's see. We have, looks like we got 3 polling questions. So let me launch the first one. And how do you keep track of your fiber now? So good old Google Earth. Visio. It's all in my head. Spreadsheets, other. Spreadsheets is usually the big winner, which it seems to be leading here. Visio, I would think Visio would be a little tough for outside plant. And then Google Earth, which is pretty good, but hard to track fiber strands, I think, in Google Earth from what I've seen. So anyway, I'll end this in just a couple more, 10 more seconds, counting down till next polling question. So yeah, spreadsheet in the poll. Spreadsheet was the big winner at 45%, not quite half, but pretty close. Then Visio, and then Google Earth, and then all in my head, and then other. So actually, all in my head was last. Other was so. Anyway, the next polling question: why is documenting your fiber important to you? I guess it's multiple choice. It's my almost favorite test question outside of, true or false, I suppose. Troubleshooting, managing capacity, managing assets, yeah. Sort of all evenly split. There's an other in there. I don't know what other would be for, but good stuff. Um, yeah, troubleshooting, managing assets, they're all pretty much even. Same with capacity. Um, so I guess why wouldn't you do all 3, right?
Hey, Jason, I'm here. Hi, everyone. This is Fred Coe. Before we jump into the demo of netTerrain, there's a Q&A button and a chat button. Feel free to ask any questions. Jason and I will get your questions answered towards the end of the webinar.
Yeah, so the last polling questions, what do you need to document? Hey, we got some people raising their hands. Let's see here. Well, if you have questions, I guess put it in the poll. I'm sorry, put it in the Q&A or the chat. Happy to help. What do you need to document? Yeah, outside plant, inside plant, or both. The big winner seems to be both. Doing a little everything there, right? So I'm going to share my other screen here. Let me find Chrome. And yeah, I'll end this. Both kind of the big winner. Some folks were just outside or inside, but that was that. So anyway, thanks for participating in that. It's always good for us to kind of see and hear what folks are interested in and looking for. So as far as fiber goes, managing fiber outside plant or inside plant for that matter, I mean, our tool being netTerrain, the company being Graphical Networks, is sort of built for both environments, inside or outside plant, really. We're very much a visualization engine tool. So you obviously see, like at the top level here, if I double click, it drills down. That's kind of our default behavior, this sort of hierarchy thing. But you'll see something like, in this case, a map where I can see, if I zoom in a bit, you'll see sort of, well, what I've defined as a pathway, but that could be a conduit or fiber cable or all the above in that case. But zoom in a bit more, and I can sort of start to click around and see some of the endpoints. Like I've got my campus here. I've got multiple campuses on this map. In fact, uh, if I go sort of to some of the endpoints, you'll start to see different campuses along the pathway. So this is kind of representing multiple schools around the state of Maryland, and they all sort of all interconnect back to the main campus, University of Maryland. Um, and I can drill down. But you'll notice, like here, I've got a map that I'm using. That's a background map, and I can double click and drill down further, like into the campus itself, and see um, a view of the campus and see different buildings, see different links, and so on. So I can choose different maps. You mentioned Google, so you could use Google or OpenStreetMap map. And so this particular layout, when you look at it, you're like, okay, well, I see a couple green buildings. There's actually multiple buildings. Just that some of them aren't really highlighted, like the two green ones, because that's always my focus in the demos, is those primarily these two. So I have them highlighted there. So if I select an object, you'll see on the left-hand side there's some data fields about the object. It shows you the latitude and longitude of the object as well. So get my little trusty annotator spotlight tool here. So on the left-hand side, you'll see some different data fields. And if I zoom in a bit, I can click on this particular, what looks like a link. And on the left-hand side, it actually tells me what it is. It's a pathway, and there's some data fields and so on. That's just the name of a connection between 2 points. In my case, I call it a pathway. Also inside of this, or related to it, I should say, is other sort of things related to the pathway. So conduit and then fiber cable. Now I know that, and I can see that visually on the right-hand side. I could, choose to turn off the pathway and let me just see conduit, or I could have both of those turned on. It doesn't really matter. Kind of just depends on what you're trying to show or do in this case. So now I actually would see, in this case, the conduit. But I can turn on my pathways as well and see both. On the left-hand side, also, if I'm looking at this particular segment, I can answer the question of, okay, this is great. I've got this thing called pathway, but what's effectively inside this pathway? This could be a trench or a duct bank or something like that. On the left-hand side, I could actually click, and it shows me, it says bundled links, quantity 1. I could click on that. And then basically it shows me the relationship of this thing I've defined as pathway to, in this case, something called conduit, right? And it says bundled link 7. That's telling me that I actually have 7 other cables or link types inside the conduit that's inside the pathway. I can click on that number 7 and actually see what those are. So this is starting to answer the question of, what do I have, how things might be connected, and so on. So if somebody comes along and that sort of gets cut for some reason, I could very easily find out, okay, well, here's all the cables that are affected, and things that I might have to do, maybe splice, resplice, and so on. But in this case, it's a bunch of fiber cables, 12 strand, 24 strand, etc. I'm just going to hit my go back button, um, and just so I can see sort of at map level, the the map again, and over here, handhole, manhole, whatever sort of the container of something else. If I double click on this, is sort of a traditional look of, you've got this sort of butterfly drawing, and then you've got, well, in my case, I've got these sort of what are representing the conduit paths or duct banks. And you'll see different cables coming in. These cables are, like in the case, 24 strand fiber cable coming from a patch panel. Now that patch panel does not live in that particular drawing. It's actually here inside the data center. And if I double click, it'll take me back basically to where, uh, to the other end connection there. And I can go back to where I was as well. But If I go back again, now I'm back inside the manhole, kind of looking at the butterfly. If I select one of these cables, 72 strand fiber, this is a 24 strand fiber, this is a conduit that connects basically from this conduit path over to the building. So these are all things that are just enabled in the tool so you can kind of visually see and understand where cables go, where they're ultimately terminating to. And then, of course, you have to get into the fiber strands, which I'll talk about in a second. But so here I've got an object, a device, a CommScope that has multiple cards in it for splicing. So it's a splice case. I can double click on this and drill down and actually see, here's the case, here's multiple cards. I can go into one of them and see things like the end connections for the strands. And if there's, basically the splice that's acting from the front to back of the connection kind of thing. So this would be an object, we call it a modeled object device in our catalog that you would bring into the tool to help represent, using the fiber and cables and so on. So I'm going to just really quickly, so now that you've kind of seen some of the, connectivity and so on, I want to show just a little bit about the tool from the standpoint of, you see all these objects. Well, how did they get in here? What sort of built this? Well, there's different ways of building this project when you're talking about inside plant or outside plant. You can do it with manual, drag and drop, that kind of thing. I'm going to show you that. You could do import. I could go up to the import tool and do something like an Excel import, right? I mean, there's discovery side as well with outside plant. A lot of times you're talking about sort of more pass-through passive devices, except for maybe the endpoints where you might have fiber going into a switch or something. So in those cases, you may or may not be able to do any kind of discovery. So I'm going to jump into my logical, so my sandbox here. I'm just going to get rid of these things. They were here from earlier. So, if you wanted to come in here and build something, I could come over here to the right and grab a site object and basically drag that in, create a site. And on the left-hand side, I could name this, Campus 1, something along those lines. And double click on it. There's other data fields I could fill out, country, something like USA, put a little check mark, and zoom in on that, and, put something along those lines. Double click, drill down, and then I could build something. So here I could come in and add a map, choose a particular map, zoom in on an area of interest, right? Maybe Baltimore. Click OK, and adds the map. Could zoom in some more. So if I wanted to start to actually add things like maybe I want to add some buildings or something, I could do that too. Now these objects are all things that you as a user can add to the tool. You don't have to rely on what's there, although it's pretty extensive as far as the catalog. So there's a lot of things there. And then if I want to, maybe there's a manhole as well. All right, I can drag and drop that in. And then I could start to come in here and build out things. I want to lay conduit, add some, maybe some bend points so this follows a specific path, do all those wonderful things. So I just want to give you a little context on how you kind of start to go about building things. Again, you could import what I just did from Excel, or again, tie into other systems using APIs and so on. So we have a lot of integrations with things like ServiceNow, SolarWinds, etc. So I'm going to go back to this view because I want to talk about, again, going back, sort of looking at fiber cables, strands, and so on. So again, looking at this segment, if I jump into this manhole, you've got this fiber cable, right? This 24 strand fiber cable connecting basically from this device, which again is that splice case, over to some patch device that's, this is actually inside the building. If I double click, it'll take me to it and it'll show me, oh, there it is, right? So there's that thing that I was talking about. But as far as the fiber cables themselves, if I single select a fiber cable, depending on what it is, On the left-hand side, I can click and see the interface for the fiber cable. And this is where I would see the fiber cable, but broken down, of course, into the individual strands. So we've got buffer tube color, we've got the strand color itself, and then you've got the ability to edit the connections. This is, if I click on this, it'll open up the interface so I can actually connect the strand to the endpoints, whatever those endpoints are. So in this case, strand 1 is connected to port B1 of the A card, that's patch panel 2, and it connects on the other side to B5 of the A card of this particular patch panel, which is in the A1 cabinet of the environmental science building. So it allows me to specify in detail exactly where the strands are connected and so on. Now, the reason you want to get into, connecting strands and so on, I mean, of course, some of that gets into capacity planning. You have strands, are they in use, where are they used, and so on. But also, it gives you the ability to track sort of the pathway of your connection circuits, etc. So, for instance, if you have a port that's terminating to some other port, and that's going to terminate, I can generate what we call the CLR, circuit layout record, which is the physical path diagram. And the physical path diagram is going to show me the end-to-end connections, starting wherever it was that I just started, right? And show me both ends of the connection. So this is a port and a card and a chassis, right? And the rack and the third floor in the Brendan building. So, and that basically is a fiber cable jumper that goes over to this port of this card, patch panel, cross connect, another port on the other side, in this case, the back side that again connects with a strand out to another port. And now you're getting into outside plant. So this is where you're mixing inside plant, right? Cabinets, buildings, floors with outside plant, equipment that's actually physically outside or maybe in a manhole or something along those lines. So this all gets generated based on the fact you've put all these connections into the system or they've gotten placed into the system somehow. So now with that said, this data can also be used effectively to generate or create defined circuits. What do I mean by that? Well, a defined circuit would be where you're actually naming the circuit path that was just shown. So as, for instance, if I go over to my tools, circuits, show circuit list, or I could look at the hop counts. And this particular circuit, where over here it's named, it says it's Brendan to McKeldin. That's the name of the circuit. And over here, if I highlight that, it says view map. That would actually show me that particular circuit at map level, if that exists, which it typically would, but it'll basically highlights the path end to end. And it's a little hard to see because these lines are green in this case because that fiber cable I picked. So sorry about that, but it is highlighting a path for me. The other thing you can do is generate what we refer to as the circuit diagram. So the circuit CLR, circuit layout record, it's basically the physical path, but there's a certain diagram that kind of shows it. And it's basically showing you end to end. So it says, okay, here's the start point at the McKeldin Library for this particular circuit using port B1 and 2 of this device inside this rack and so on. And then it connects over and tells you what fiber cable and what strands are being used, et cetera, et cetera. So you get this nice sort of pathway defined of that particular circuit, which in this case, that's the one named Brendan to McKeldin. So the thing about using the circuit tool is it allows you to name the circuit, but also it takes these strands sort of out of use as far as applying them to another circuit. You couldn't do it once they're in use, then they're in use for that circuit only. So if you are using the circuit tool for our outside plant, that's how it works. So yeah, let me see. I've been sort of rambling on. I see. I don't see any questions, but if there are any questions, please feel free to drop them in. So yeah, it's a nice way to be able to see inside or outside plant, at least relationships. So I can double click and have it navigate to a particular object from those diagrams. So in this case, I'm going over to this particular building. Um, and then I could, again, navigate down into locations and see. So now this is obviously more inside plant, where I'm actually in the building and showing the physical equipment in a cabinet and certain connections and aspects of that. So go back up. So, so again, just to sort of reiterate, you have the ability to, create diagrams like this, drag and drop information. You could do an import. Again, you can integrate with some other systems depending on the data and what you're trying to do. But I'll leave it at, if there's any questions, feel free to chime in. But um, if you do have, let me stop my share for a second and let me jump over to back into my Zoom share. Just go to my PowerPoint again. There we go. So if there's other questions, you can direct them over to sales at graphicalnetworks.com or fred.co, which is on my screen. You can certainly do that. The other is you can open up and do a free trial, netterrain.us. No, you don't need a credit card. You don't need anything except an email address, because you got to sign up, and we're going to send you a verification account to start the trial. It's 14 days. And if you need help or have questions, you can reach out to us again. Sales at Graphical Networks, and hopefully we can help answer any questions or set up a call with you to go over more things or a more extensive demo, whatever sort of makes sense. I'll see if there's any questions. Yeah, we have 3 branches and a few points. Be able to monitor the network traffic on these point-to-points. We're not really a monitoring tool, so if you're looking to do true monitoring of your fiber or connections, the most monitoring we really get into is more status of a device, where we can monitor up, if it's responding still or not, and then send a trap alarm, that kind of stuff after the fact. We're adding more monitoring in the future. But currently, that's not really what we get into. So you're better off with probably some other, true to form monitoring tool, PRTG or SolarWinds, something like that. So I hope that helps. What type of reporting? Fiber availability and cable ports in use, fiber distribution. Yeah. Yeah, so I didn't get too deep into reporting, but certainly if you want to have another call, I can do that. We have a reporting engine that's in netTerrain, and if you sign up, you'll see that in there. We also have a reporting tool. You can build kind of your own reports on the fly. And there are sort of reports for some of the things you mentioned, fiber availability on the cable, ports in use, and so on. You can kind of do that at all different levels in the diagrams themselves or in a report, depending on how you want to do it. Like typically, I see a lot of folks that do port availability, like how many ports are in use at the device or at the cabinet and so on. They'll do that at different levels, and they'll just report it sort of right there. So when you click on a device, you'll know, okay, there's 24 ports, but 12 have connections, so by default you consider them in use. Splice cases, which fibers are terminated to which splice trays. Yeah. I didn't show it very long, but the splice tray I had multiple cars, and one of them was sort of populated. But again, I didn't spend a lot of time on it, so I can show you that, like I said, in more detail, or one of the sales folks can. But yeah, you can inventory the splice cases and all that stuff. Custom fields. How do you add custom fields to your database? You press a button. You go to the catalog. So if you want to add a field to an object type, you press a button and say add, and you're done. It's very easy to do. You do have to be what we call a power user administrator. So we have different user types, roles. So you would have to have those privileges to do that. But you can very easily add a field to an object in netTerrain. So whether it's a device, whether it's a building or a floor or a room or a device, switch, router, etc. pretty much just press a button and type in the name that you want to add. That's about it. Can I pick location A to Z and have the tool identify available paths or routes between the 2 points? You can. So I could select 2 buildings, let's say, and say, is there a path here? If there is, what cables are available for me to use strands? What strands are available? Does it recommend? So do some of those things as well, which is always handy. So anyway, good questions. Thanks for that. Again, if you want, try it out, netterrain.us, or you can reach out to us if you want a bigger demo or have more sort of technical questions. So I'll say answer live to all these. I think I got them all done. I think we got them finished. So thanks everybody for your time. Appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you. So have a great rest of your day.
Oh, hey,
yeah.
Jason, yes, Ryan had a question about I think one of our features, the ACRA. Pick A location, Z location, have tool identify below paths.
Yeah, I answered him. Yep.
Oh, you did. Sorry. All right.
That's all right. Yep. So yeah, as Fred was mentioning, the A to Z and what was asked, you can select 2 points, and it'll recommend a pathway or what strands to use and all that good stuff. And you can technically override that too. So, but anyway.
Ron, if you need to see that, feel free to contact us. Show that to you again.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, all right. Thanks everybody. Appreciate your time. Bye bye.